Now I've opened a MainStage file which doesn't have any of my patches in it, so that I can talk through how I've built my full setup. So the first step to talk about is going to be layout. For me, I think it's important to match your hardware layout in an intuitive way so that I can look at the hardware, look at the screen, and they're clearly linked. So as you can see, I've created a background image that I've put on there so that it looks like my controller. I've put the knobs and the buttons in the same places as the controller so that I can very quickly, without having to think, see that's how it relates to the real world. Same thing, I've got my 2 keyboards in there and my 2 sustain pedals, all laid out as they would be. I think it's important to try to keep things tidy from the start. If you just build up your MainStage as you go along, it can become quite messy and quite hard to see what's going on in the layout. So I've put a lot of thought before even starting to build the layout into, okay, which information do I actually need? What's most important? So you'll see things like I've got the BPM in there, but it's kind of faded out in a gray because that's not something that I need very quickly, whereas the name of the patch is big, bright white at the top left because that's important for me to be able to see. So design-wise, I want it to be quick and easy to see what's going on. I don't want to have to search through lots of kind of labels that are all the same color or anything like that. It can be tempting to put all kinds of flashy things in there that aren't actually necessary. Like there's some information that you can put there, but do you really need it? So I've tried to keep it just to the things that I need and the things that will be useful in the moment. Color coding is really important, like I mentioned with the gray there. But I think of my controller as being in 4 sections. So the left-hand side, which I've got color-coded blue, is to do with pianos. The second one is green, and that's to do with pads. Third one is red, that's synths. And the fourth one is kind of turquoisey color, which is drones. And I've matched the colors on the controller to the ones on the screen. The yellow things at the top are anything to do with master, so next and previous patch and master volume and so on. And I've consistently used that throughout. So you'll see as I build things, my layers if it's a piano, then it's going to be blue. And if it's a pad, then it's going to be green. One thing that's been really useful in my layout is a big area for text. As you can see here, it's got this info in it. There was space left over in my layout, so I thought, why not just put a big text block in it? And I can use that to write down notes, and those notes might be, I sometimes use it to remind me to turn things on and off, depending on whether I'm playing with another keys player or not, or in a pinch, maybe you could put some chords in there, a little note for if you're going to do that. Obviously, we want to learn our songs, but if you have a last-minute change or you want to make sure you're not going to forget something, it can be handy to use a fixed-width font like Courier so that you can line up chords and bar lines. Also, structures of songs. If I'm music directing and we're doing something that's a little bit different, there's no harm writing it down in there just to help me remember in the moment. Another thing I've got on here is space for a clock. Because we're just in layout now, it just says 127, but I assign that to a clock because you don't always know that you're going to have a clock that you can see from the platform on a Sunday. So particularly as an MD, it can be useful to see what the time is. One thing I've avoided using is the smart controls that MainStage has to offer. I haven't used it, so I don't entirely know what it does, but I think it will show you different controls depending on which instrument is selected. I found that's not very useful, partly because my patches are so complicated, but also it's not going to consistently match what I've got in front of me with my hardware. Another thing I think it's important to do as you go along is name things. So, don't just have a knob that says param 5 on it or whatever. Try to be consistent with your naming throughout, and whether that's channel names, layer names, and so on. It just makes it so much easier later on when you've got a much more complicated setup to navigate your way through it.